So, what if World War III actually started? It's a heavy question, I know, but one that feels, well, more and more relevant these days. What we're going to do today is use some serious analysis from military strategists and survival experts to really piece together what a modern world war would actually look like. I'm talking from the very first minute all the way to its potential bitter end. All right, let's dive in.
Now, before we get into the big picture stuff, armies, navies, all that, I want to bring this right down to a personal level, to you. Imagine it. The systems that run our entire world just stop. What's your very first move? Seriously, think about it. Because in a scenario like this, those first few decisions you make, they could easily be the most critical ones of your entire life. The first shots of World War III, they're probably not going to be missiles. They're going to be cyber attacks. It starts with silence. Maybe your phone buzzes with some kind of emergency alert, and then just nothing. The internet slows down to a crawl, like old dial-up speeds. Communication networks just start to choke. And that entire digital world that connects literally everything, it just stops. And this isn't some minor inconvenience, folks. This is the first weapon being fired. Okay, so let's really break down that critical first 24 hours. Because the game here isn't about fighting. It's about not losing. It's about getting your head around the fact that all the systems we take for granted, power, water, even law and order, they're all about to fail. And you are in a desperate race against the clock. All right, so what do? Your first moves have to be purely defensive. Step one, get inside, now, and lock everything down. Then, and this is absolutely critical, you have to secure water immediately. I mean, fill everything you can. Bathtubs, pots, every bottle you have. Why? Because as soon as that power grid goes down, the water pumps stop working. You might only have minutes. Then black out your windows. And this isn't just about hiding from potential airstrikes. It's about making your home look empty, unoccupied. Because in this new world, a single lit window is basically a target. Yeah, and that quote, wow, it just perfectly captures why your best bet is to stay home. I mean, think about it. Within minutes of that first alert going out, this becomes the new reality. Your neighbors, they're now your competitors. All that civility we rely on, it just evaporates. The only smart move is to be absolutely nowhere near that kind of chaos. Okay, but it's not just the obvious dangers. What's really fascinating and kind of terrifying are the threats you can't see. For example, an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. A single nuclear bomb detonated way up in the atmosphere could instantly fry pretty much any unprotected electronics on the ground. So what's your defense? Believe it or not, a simple metal trash can lined with some cardboard can work as a makeshift Faraday cage. You could use it to protect a really crucial piece of gear, like a hand crank radio. And then there's disease. When the toilets stop flushing because the water pumps are out, disease becomes a silent killer. A basic two-bucket system for separating waste sounds simple, but it could literally be a lifesaver. So that's what's happening at the personal level. But this crisis, it scales up and it scales up fast. It goes from being about what's happening behind your front door to a full-blown societal breakdown. Yeah, those first 24 hours, they're all about you. But the weeks that follow, they're about the collapse of, well, everything else. And this timeline here, it just shows how incredibly fast normal life would just disappear. Look at this. Within just 4 days, the US military is already burning through its most advanced missiles at a rate they just can't sustain. Fast forward to month 2, and the supply chain is so completely broken that the government has to start rationing food and medicine. And then, by month 6, the entire US economy has been totally mobilized for war. You'd have millions of people working in these new pop-up factories, churning out cheap, disposable drones. And the economic hit? It's not gradual. It's immediate and it's total. Just try to wrap your head around this. In the first 8 hours of the conflict, before most people even have a clue what's really going on, the global markets don't just dip, they completely evaporate. We're talking a quarter of all value, poof, gone. Trading gets shut down automatically. It is, no exaggeration, a full-blown economic apocalypse from the word go. And of course, right behind that financial shock comes the human cost. See, global trade gets severed almost instantly. So all those companies that rely on imported parts to make their products, they just stop. They can't operate. And the result? Within just 2 months, the unemployment rate is projected to hit a staggering 18%. To put that in perspective for you, that's nearly double the worst point of the 2008 financial crisis. Millions upon millions of jobs, just gone, in the blink of an eye. All right, so society back home is in absolute turmoil. But what does the war itself look like? Let's pull the camera back and zoom out to the global chessboard, because you have to understand this isn't just one war, it's several massive conflicts all happening at the same time. So pretty quickly, the world fractures into two main teams. On one side, you've got the Western coalition. That's the United States and its major treaty allies, like NATO countries, Japan, and so on. They're basically fighting to keep the current global order in place. And then on the other side, you've got what military strategists are calling the revisionist alliance. This is China, Russia, Iran, nations that basically feel the current system is rigged against them, and for them, this war is their one big shot to completely remake the world map in their favor. And the war doesn't just start in one place. It ignites on three critical fronts all at the same time. And there's a clear strategy here. The goal is to stretch the Western coalition so thin that it just can't respond effectively everywhere at once. So you've got the Pacific, which would be a high-tech naval and missile war, likely centered on a blockade of Taiwan. Then you've got Europe, a brutal, grinding ground war in the Baltics, probably focused on a tiny but critical piece of land called the Suwalki Gap. And finally, the Middle East, where the play would be to choke off global oil supplies by seizing control of the Strait of Hormuz, crippling the world economy. So here's the really crucial thing to understand about this kind of war. It's not going to look like old black and white footage of World War II, with front lines and trenches. Not at all. This is a battle of logistics, a battle of supply chains, fought from thousands of miles away. The main goal isn't even to take and hold territory. It's to cripple the other guy's ability to fight. You're trying to blind their satellites, sink their supply ships, and just destroy their missile stockpiles faster than they can possibly build new ones. It is a war of attrition, but fought with 21st century technology. Okay, so after months, maybe even years of this absolutely grinding conflict, how does it all end? And maybe more importantly, what does the world even look like after the fighting finally stops? Because whatever comes next, that's the new reality, and it's probably going to be a permanent one. Now, this chart is really, really telling. What it shows is that a total clean victory for either side is actually the least likely outcome. No, the most probable end by a long shot, a 70% chance, is some kind of negotiated stalemate. Basically, both sides just become so depleted, so economically shattered, and they get so dangerously close to that nuclear red line that they're forced to come to the negotiating table. In this scenario, nobody really wins. They just agree to stop losing. And this right here really lays out the two completely different and frankly terrifying futures we'd be facing. On one hand, you have the aftermath of a conventional war. Now, it would be devastating, don't get me wrong, but it's survivable. We're talking a deep worldwide recession, a much more chaotic world because the US would be too depleted to act as a global peacekeeper. But then you have the aftermath of a nuclear war. And that's not a recession, that's a civilization-altering event. We're talking a global population crash down below 1 billion people in just 5 years. Widespread famine as global temperatures plummet. It's a fundamental reordering of human society as we know it. So, when you look at all of this, it leaves you with a final, pretty sobering thought. In a modern global conflict on this kind of scale, our traditional ideas of winning and losing, they become almost completely meaningless. The only real question left to ask is this. After all is said and done, after all the destruction, what kind of world is actually left for the survivors? And who gets to pick up the pieces and decide what happens next?